Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. My name is Ariana Sessoms, and I'm with Futures Without Violence, based near our DC office. I'm also a member of NRCDV's Intimate Partner Violence Prevention Council, so I'm so happy to be here with y'all, and I will be your virtual room monitor for this session. So this learning circle is on language and messaging with the Michigan Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence and Act to Change. And I'm happy to introduce our presenters, starting with Amanda Barratt. She, her, who is the Associate Director for the Michigan Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence. As Michigan's catalyst for creating empowered and transformed communities, the Coalition's mission is to develop and promote comprehensive efforts aimed at eliminating all forms of domestic violence, sexual violence, and human trafficking. Amanda is a sex therapist and sexual health educator as well, and envisions communities where people can live free from violence and experience delight and pleasure. Amanda is passionate about community building, violence prevention, and sexual health education and development. So hello, welcome, welcome to Amanda. Next, I'll introduce Paige Allia Hill, who uses she, they, and is a program manager at the Michigan Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence, where they lead statewide prevention efforts for domestic violence, sexual violence, and human trafficking. Paige brings a grounded, survivor-centered approach rooted in trauma-informed, anti-oppression, and anti-racist principles, alongside their experience building a prevention program at the Coalition's community partner and local member program, Hope Shores Alliance. They are committed to social justice advocate. They are a committed social justice advocate, working to create cultural change and support communities through innovative prevention strategies. And then last but certainly not least, we have Josef Canaria, he, him, who serves as the manager of programs and strategic initiatives at Act to Change, which is a national organization dedicated to ending bullying in the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander community. He is a proud, gay, fat Filipino immigrant who grew up facing bullying himself. Josef brings both lived experiences and a decade of working in the anti-sexual and domestic violence advocacy and prevention field, and educational leadership to his work. He leads the Youth Ambassador Program and other flagship initiatives that center youth voice, community empowerment, and anti-oppression values and principles. Josef is passionate about helping young people reclaim their power and see themselves as agents of change, all the while being an outspoken member of the Bay Hive and an unapologetic Swiftie. Really bringing two different communities together there. So we love to see that. So thank you all so much for being here. You're going to have some really great conversation and discussion today with these amazing presenters. I'm so excited to hear you all chat. And if folks have any questions, please post them in the chat or feel free to read them aloud or share them aloud at any point in the session. You can also hit the raise your hand emoji and we can let y'all share. And I'll share some links in the chat so you get to know a little bit more about these organizations and these folks. But then that is all I have to share, and I'm going to pass it on over to y'all.
Thank you so much. We're so excited to be in space with you all, to talk about language, to talk about messaging, to talk about our own journey and our continued journey. Because we're not there, right? We are not, we have not reached, there is no end destination, and we are definitely still on this journey together. Before we get started with our discussion though, Paige, do you want to talk about the mentee that we want to get started with?
Absolutely. I will start off by screen sharing with y'all. And if this is your first time experiencing Menti, welcome. I'm excited to be introducing you to it. And if not, welcome back to Menti. We absolutely adore utilizing tech like this and virtual spaces to give multiple opportunities and ways for folks to interact. So our ask for you is to either utilize a smartphone if you have one handy and scan that QR code, or on your laptop or device, computer, whatever you're on, go to www.mentee.com and then enter this code to join us virtually. And I can see folks are already giving us a thumbs up in the bottom right corner, and we've got 12 folks already in the space. I'm going to leave it here a moment or two longer. All right, that way more folks can join us. We've got a whole bunch just joined. I'm not even going to try and keep up. This is fantastic. All right. I am going to go to our next slide, and if you need support or anything getting in there, we can do that via chat.
And if you can't get into the Mentee, you can unmute and say whatever you need to say, and we'll put it in the Mentee for you. Or you can just chat it in, and we also can put it in the Mentee for you if you're like, I could get in, but my brain is, not gonna be on multiple things right now. That's totally fine.
Absolutely. So here we are. We're starting off with a question, and we're going to come back to this at the end today. So our question is, tell us all the jargon, all the confusing words in prevention. Oh, we're going to get all the acronyms, aren't we? This group knows the assignment. And while we're watching this live enter, I'll let you know you have unlimited amounts of time you can add things. So if you see something, you're like, yes, type it in again. It will grow the word and bold the word. So it'll get larger and more bold. So all of those things.
I'm throwing in so many. This is like fun for me. I'm just thinking like every single term that I'm like, I low-key still kind of don't know what they mean, but I pretend I do.
And then like, as we're watching this, like all the varying ways that we say the same thing are popping up here. That is really telling to me. And my brain too, Joseph, I'm like, what's that mean again? Oh yeah, I think I've got this.
Mhm.
Has anyone put greening in there? I'm just looking.
Oh, that's like really
That's a
good
good
one.
one.
I don't see it yet, but feel free to. There it is. Somebody took it. Thank you. All right, we're slowing down a little.
It looks like I'm like looking at a CDC application.
Uh, if this was your grant application, you are not alone.
Yeah, an evaluation plan or like a
Evaluation.
logic model. Yes. Yeah, some annual report. Yes.
And I'm realizing as we're looking at this, there are also terms that I definitely take for granted and understanding of. Where like I think that that is like the norm, and yet 100% it's still like that insider knowledge as to what this means.
Want to give it like 2 more minutes?
I see septed on here, CPTED, which is so funny to me because in that I know I've found out something. It stands for crime prevention through environmental design. But I heard people saying septed in a meeting I was at, and I didn't know what it was, and I'm Googling it, but I'm not, I didn't know it was an acronym, and I'm Googling like S instead of a C, like SEP, TED, trying to figure out what people what people are saying, and I'm not even yielding like resulting context that makes sense. And so, I really resonate personally with some of the words that are up here, because I think even when we say acronyms, even if people don't know, it's sometimes they still can't know when they leave a space with you because it's so nuanced.
Hmm.
I thought that one was a typo.
Real. Yeah, that's so funny. It was in chat. Honestly, thought it was spelling error. They meant CPETSD. Real.
Yeah, that is real.
Yes. Yep. Or like SDOH. If I didn't know what that meant, stow.
So yeah.
Stow. Am I Homer Simpson?
I
Like,
was
I
making a
mistyped it?
noise.
No, exactly. And even then, social determinants of health. What, like, I kind of know what that means. Yeah, yep.
I think that people bring up a lot, like the layers of prevention feels really confusing, like when someone's like tertiary, primary, secondary, and they get used in a lot of different spaces. Risk and protective factor, socio-ecological model, right? Like all of these words get said in spaces in ways that you're like, am I supposed to know what this means? Are we like inherent as
Mm.
people just supposed to know what these words mean? Because the way people deliver them are often delivered in a way that you're like, you're saying it in a way that I think I'm supposed to know it and I don't know it. And now I feel like I can't say I don't know it. So
Mm,
I am like in this position where I just have to not along now. There's almost no point of even being able to back out and say, I'm sorry, I don't know what that means.
hmm. Yeah, I think most people can relate. Like when you first engage in this work, I think you're expected to like have like a master's in public health and you just need to know what all of these things mean automatically. And if you don't, then obviously you don't belong here. And obviously, then why are you doing this work? And that's so antithetical to everything we always preach about in a lot of organizations too, that we're always community centered, that we're going to meet people where they're at the same time, we gatekeep who's allowed to do this work. We literally say, unless you can define these words and have the data and all these different things, do you even get the money to do this kind of work? And if you don't have the money, then this work isn't legitimate. Then obviously your prevention work doesn't count. Then obviously your anything that you're doing that is still in line with our values isn't valid just because you didn't know what the difference between social determinants of health and a socio-ecological model was.
I once had somebody, after I like felt like I was really getting a handle, also say, that's not a social determinant of health, that's a structural determinant of health. And I was just like, I gotta go. I gotta get out of here. Why? And so the thing is, the call's coming from inside the house.
Yes.
Why are we doing this to each other? Like, that was a horrible thing to say to somebody that's your peer in a meeting, but like, it's happening in these spaces, right? One, there's a chat I want to uplift. When you are in the field / academia and these terms are ingrained in you, it becomes normal, in quotes, and harder to figure out what everyone's baseline truly is. And I think we see this sometimes culture of like, and if you don't know, I'm going to make sure people know that you don't know. And that's just not, that's not prevention work.
No, not at all. It's not at all like what the point is. Because from correct me if I'm wrong, like prevention needs to be about the people and less about like words and like and reports and logic models and toolkits. Like at the end of the day, that's not going to prevent anything. Like knowing exactly in 5 years which key performance indicators and that like what that's not going to prevent anything. So why do we spend so much of our time and resources and energy into things that we pretend we value, but in action oftentimes we just say we do?
Paige, just to let you know, I think it said you have paused screen sharing.
Oh, I can straight up end my screen share for the moment so that we can all see everything. Let me do that. That's better.
Perfect.
Thank you for that.
So we are going to chat a little bit about language and what our experience with each other has kind of been like, and what we hope to see in spaces. And we're going to end with a different Menti meter at the end, and we want to give time for people to utilize that just so folks are knowing what to expect from us. I think that we have a really cool journey and experience to share with you. As Josef had said, Josef worked at the coalition and transitioned to working to Act to Change. Paige worked in a local sexual assault domestic violence agency and transitioned to working at the coalition. And I think that I had mentioned this on Monday, if anybody caught the panel, that sometimes in this work, even how partnerships are formed are not with individuals as people, right? And thinking, I might not be in this position, but it also doesn't mean like I do no longer have value. I think that we like devalue people and humans, and like what does it look like to continue partnerships even if their roles are transitioning or their scope looks a little bit different. Like when we say things like prevention takes all of us and prevention work needs to be done everywhere, but then someone gets a new job and we're like, see ya, you know, like I don't know, I got to get a new partner. It just feels so wrong. And so I think that you can continue like relationships with folks and continue to like partner and do the work even if it looks different and it's supposed to look different as time goes on. And we're kind of like this example of this evolution. And I hope 10 years from now, when we're all in very different spaces, we could come back and say like, and this is how, some of the support and partnerships have evolved because, we didn't give up on each other because we're not, in a certain role or because we're not funded by a certain grant or something like that.
Mhm.
Gosh, otherwise we're always starting over.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
So when Joseph and I were onboarding, we saw a lot of those words that everyone shared, right? That is just something that we were, Googling outside in our own free time. And I think that one, not having at that time an onboarding process or like a time with like people who could support us and like understanding context or what this looked like made the work feel for me really isolating.
Mhm.
And I felt like an imposter. I felt like if I said anything, someone would be like, why you shouldn't have this job and we're going to fire you. So I just didn't feel like I could say something for a long time. I don't know how you felt, Joseph.
Oh, all the time. Absolutely. In any space I was in, I felt like that intense imposter syndrome of like, I think I'm doing the work. I thought I was doing the work, but I don't know these words, so am I actually doing the work? Because it was so in so many different friendship spaces, that's what it all came down to. It was all about this like of this white supremacist viewpoint of worshiping the written word and understand like academia over anything. And that is so still to this day a lot of prevention spaces. I think we are slowly, gradually, like kind of stepping away from that, but a lot of these kind of conversations are still rooted in ways that isn't accessible, which is completely antithetical to our work and what we're trying to do. Like it's so funny, like even right before this conversation, we were presented as the experts, and I'm like, I mean I guess like maybe like I guess I'm an expert in some sense, but only because I've been doing the work. But if you were to like quiz me on things that like all the things we threw on the Mentimeter, I I don't know, like maybe a C plus, maybe. Right. And I think it's just so funny that, like, I don't know. I learned this prevention by doing the work, and it wasn't really ever about knowing the words. It was me like asking just questions and me just really thinking like what matters. Like it's our culture. It's how do we function as people with one another, less than about knowing every single legal code or law or anything that we spend so much time focusing on.
I remember that we would have to memorize
Oh my
some
God.
of this stuff. I know, Joseph, you're like, oh my goodness. And we were like, we're trying to get it and be like perfect, right? Because that was the standard. Unfortunately, is like perfectly reciting all this information and, really being quizzed at different intervals and set up to, it with different high stakes situations and like not making mistakes. Again, all antithetical to prevention work. Like none of that is ending violence in a lot, in any way. But I just remember feeling so much pressure. And when us and then a couple of our other colleagues who are on the call right now were having like a lunch together, we were like, I really don't know what this word means. Or like, do you? And everyone is convinced that someone else was like, oh no, we need to do the work this way. And after we had some staffing shifts and it was our team being able to be vulnerable and be like, I have felt unincluded maybe in this work on our team, or I don't feel like any of these words resonate with me. Then we said, how are we supposed to be bringing in other people then? how are we supposed to be building community if even us as folks who are working aren't feeling connected with each other, or the words that are being used? How we're like, why? I wonder why our reach is so low. I wonder why our engagement is so low. Well, guess what? Those words from that mentee are not the words that people use to build community. I am going to tell you, I don't know a lot, but I do know that.
Exactly. Exactly. Like, I don't know about you. I've never joined like a trauma informed like group, but probably join like a healing group,
Yeah.
right? I've never joined like a social cohesion, community connectedness group, but I would join places that like talk about inclusivity and belonging, like words that actually would resonate, but are saying the same things, but in words that don't require like a dictionary.
Mhm. I think
Yeah.
that like this important piece was for us, we inherited a structure, right? Like we didn't create it. It was created before we even got to doing our work. And sometimes there is like barriers to changing some of that structure. And we had a lot of barriers because we did try to make some changes. And people were like, absolutely not. Will you change this? And the kind of reasoning when we were like, can we change messaging or change the frequency of the group? Or like, we're hearing from people that we're trying to engage that they want more flexibility. And it was like, well, they're not committed to prevention then, if they need something different than the model that we have. And so as we're trying to like listen to our communities and engage in that, we were met with a lot of barriers from people who weren't even facilitating some of the spaces with us.
Mhm.
It says, we have a little chat. I'd love to hear how y'all have or hope to bridge that gap when working with others and translate the jargon to meet folks where they're at. Yeah, that is kind of what we're gonna be talking about today. Is as a team, we looked at some of the language and we're like, if we don't resonate with this, why don't we change it? And at a point we had leadership uh, support and transition, that we were able to make some of these changes. And we did see a big difference of who was coming to spaces that we were trying to cultivate for our communities, and who was sharing their expertise. And even when we were able to say, like, come and gather together and we want to hear from you, I think that there was all of this time, all this pressure that we had to be the experts, right? Like we had people say to us, you're the state coalition, like you need, and yeah, we work for the state coalition, but we don't know everything. We don't work in every community. We will never know everything. And I think going into spaces with attitudes like that is the biggest barrier to like meaningful connection that we have had. And so if you have folks who are messaging that to you and you're like, this is wrong, you're right, that is wrong. And I wish someone would have sat with us and said, you're not, like, what you're feeling right now is okay. Because I think a lot of us were like, what's wrong with me? Well, I keep getting these directives that are so counterintuitive to what I'm feeling that we should do or what feels right. And we found out it wasn't us that was the problem.
Mhm. Yes, humility is absolutely the key. And I think that's something that I'm reminded of every single day, that like this work isn't meant to be polished. Like, right? Like if this work was meant to be like perfect in every way, we would have solved our problem. Like domestic violence and sexual assault just wouldn't exist if we had the perfect ways in which we pretend we operate under, right? Is I think like Amanda, with these examples, it ties into the memory when we shifted framing and branding our prevention space from activism conservatory to communities prevention or in-person like annual summit thing as an activist conservatory summit to a prevention gathering, right? Like I would raise their hands, like who would rather attend a place called activism conservatory or prevention gathering, right? I, to me, I don't even know what a conservatory is, and running the space even. What is a conservatory? It's a room on the clue board, right? That's like across from the ballroom and the billiard room in the kitchen, right? Like Professor Plum and Miss Scarlet with the lead pipe in the conservatory. That's what I knew the conservatory was. Right? Like I don't know about y'all, but like seriously, like it was something that the Mission Coalition, like we focused so heavily on jargon and that to gatekeep who was allowed to do prevention work
Yeah.
or what.
I think that is this time, Paige, you might have remembered there was like a huge application process to even have access to the spaces that we had. And that was something that Joseph and I had dropped. We're like, why are we making people fill out an application to prevent violence? Like, honestly, we should be amplifying the work that's being done, not having them fill out an application. And people were like, who gave you the authority to not have an application? And you need to have these applications. And Paige, I think your first like onboarding with us was filling out an application to join spaces.
It was indeed, yeah. And I think that was like just before the most current iteration of Delta, that we were as a community and as a member program, we were working on building whatever our prevention muscles were going to be, as having never done the officialness of what was considered prevention. And I say it that way because the more involved it was, oh, this is interwoven into a lot of what we already do without the buzzwords, without the jargon. But yes, I remember the application. It was thorough.
Yeah, I like in that space, I had to present information in a way that I knew was inaccessible. But I was so scared to present it in inaccessible ways. There was one session that was around power mapping, right?
Yes.
Is even like a concept that's like even kind of really intimidating. Of like, what does that mean? I put in the example from the movie, one of my favorite movies as an elder millennial, Mean Girls,
Yeah.
where Janice Ian maps out in the cafeteria who holds the power, right? Of like the Regina George and the plastics control that high school, but like the mathletes or the band kids, right? They hold their own separate power, but you should still leverage them. You should understand that they also have their own spheres of influence and can still be something that we can work to our greater good of having that high school be a better place for everybody, right? And I was horrified to bring that example into space, but that's how I always understood power mapping represented in the media. The little overview of a cafeteria map of like that. If that's how power mapping was explained to me through a movie like Mean Girls, that was so like that. I don't know about y'all. I've seen that movie a million times. Like I'm too gay to function. Like I am Damien, right? Like I in every which way. Like fine. But that but I couldn't. I was intimidated to even share it that way because I knew I might have gotten in trouble. That's not living into our values. It's not, presenting the material in a way that's not been like approved or whatever. But you know what? So more people came to me saying like, I finally understood power mapping because of the movie Mean Girls.
Yes. Yes, I
Yes.
think that we have these like really real examples of when we were able, and here's like the true inherent thing sometimes about organizational structures is some of your staff have less power to like make changes than other staff at organizations. And that's another topic that but until we were like given space and ability to like make changes, we didn't see a shift in engagement or impact across the work that we were trying to do. But when we did, and we started to say like what would resonate with our audience, and right, like examples that resonate with us might not resonate with you, which is why we need tons of different people with different perspectives and experiences to be able to talk about things. And that is this other thing is, if everyone on your team holds the same identities, then sometimes the messaging feels really similar. And as our team was able to grow, and the identities that were represented were more reflective of communities that we were trying to serve, we got different messaging too. And I think just understanding that there sometimes still are going to be barriers, but it doesn't mean like to stop trying, because we experienced barriers for a long time and it did take some time, but we're here now. And I don't know, I think that there are all of these examples that we have too about how we had to decide like, is it like my voice that needs to be heard right now, right? And most of the time it was not, right? Like our communities have so much more to say than what we have to say.
I want to lift up a comment in the chat that really resonates for me, having launched prevention at a member program. So in the chat, it says, the biggest barrier I experience in my current role at a dual DV-SV agency is that prevention is very much siloed and put on a singular person or team. So even within the field, / my specific organization, leadership doesn't truly value nor prioritize prevention work for themselves. It is incredibly frustrating, but has been a great motivator to make many community connections. I would love for us to spend a little time unpacking that, because there are so many layers to this, and just like, yes, this is so valid and so multi-layered here. And that's the fact that, like, just to start off, the buy-in has to be internal, right, at the agency before we can even think of going out into the community to start doing that prevention work. So if it's not valued or prioritized internally, what does it look like to be able to build that outreach that happens in the community to lift up? And that siloing, I think, goes right alongside with that. If it's only one person, when the reality is, like, if we move through the jargon, which sometimes we can get very, very bogged down by or stuck in, particularly because of that application, because of the language that's needed and all of that, or even the fear of stepping into or across funding where we're not allowed to do prevention work versus where we are allowed, that can often like create that silo where only a couple of individuals are able to even have those discussions. So like, what does it look like to grow that and really support a team and show them that this isn't only the folks who are quote unquote labeled the preventionists internally, but that it's the entire team to make and to cultivate that connectedness in the community.
I think too, there's such a high point of entry to like traditionally public health funded prevention work, that when you ask agencies, like, can you get on board with this, that the cost to learn these words is so high. So if I, say to you, like, we really need to like look at the risk and protective factors so we can influence social and structural determinants of health so that perpetration rates like lower by 17%, like nobody's engaging with me in a conversation. But if I said to my teams, like, do we want to live in places that feel connected and supportive? What would that look like? How do we make that happen? How do we make sure that our community like supports survivors and uplifts each other and shows up for each other and is rooted in like and people feel like they belong and they can be their true selves? A lot of people are like, yeah, I can get on board with that. I know what you're saying. But that's not how the spaces are introduced, right? They're introduced in ways that people don't feel like are spaces for them. When I say those jargon words, I don't see myself in the picture of how to make that happen, right? I don't see myself in that. And so I think people can't prioritize that either. They're like, I don't even know what that is. How can that be my priority when I have survivors right in front of me who need something? So that it makes it so hard to do that when you can actually do both things. We can serve and support survivors and envision communities where violence isn't happening, where we're supporting each other, we're showing up for each other, we're valuing each other.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I want to add to that, Amanda, like absolutely 100% what you're saying. And I think the how I've kind of understood to de-silo intervention and prevention is that most survivors, if not all, always say, I don't want this to ever happen to someone else. Right? Like most of the survivors you ever served, they can say, like, thank you for your advocacy, thank you for all of the support you provided. I really hope this doesn't happen to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And so if like Crystal, if your leadership or organization still doesn't value or prioritize prevention work, then I think that needs to be a reminder for them that if you really are trying to be survivor centered and want to honor what survivors want, it's to make sure that there's less victimization for other people in the community. And I think that really does help resonate for a lot of people to remind, like, that's how we can de-silo our work. Survivors want less harm for other people. So what are we doing about it? Yes. And Ariana, just in your question, the aha moment where someone you worked with finally able to connect. So I think like a lot of times people are like, how do you actually even prevent like sexual and domestic violence? What does that mean? Where like, are you gonna just like lock up every single perpetrator ever? I'm like, no, I mean, maybe, but probably not. But I think for me, though, it was when it was introduced to me like that at the end of the day, it's our choices that matter. Like we always choose to commit harm. People choose to commit violence. So how do we then make the choice of violence harder to make? And I think, that was really when people kind of understood that. And when I think every single day about all the choices that we decide to have, what we have for lunch versus what we do before bed are also like choices. But those are things we do that's easier or harder to make depending on what access we have, depending on what's physically surrounding us, depending on what is valued in our society, right? If I frame the reduction of violence as how do we make certain choices easier or harder, I think that's something that people kind of understand that in a way that's like, oh, okay. And so I bring it back to other public health things like drunk driving, right? Like what have we come to a society to make that harder, right? Like we've come up with designated drivers, we've come up with like just social norms. We've all agreed as a society let's make it hard for someone to choose to drink and drive. So let's make it hard for somebody to choose to perpetrate violence, is kind of how I kind of like to frame it.
I think that when we've set that as like our intro,
Yes.
we've been able, as we're talking about, okay, well, this is our initiative. And then being able to go back, and this gives people more choice, right? Because when you make it about choice to begin with, how do we make it harder for people to choose this, easier to choose other things? When people are saying, okay, you're talking now about early childhood education access or childcare access, and we're like, right, because having access to this long term can give people more choice. And we've already set that as a foundation of why is violence occurring, right? It's because people are making these choices. And how do we expand choice ultimately? It's through all of these different ways, right? And then we're not the only people who prevent violence, right? Like all these other people are preventing violence and have been since way before this field was professionalized. And so remembering and reminding, humbling ourselves that like we didn't create violence prevention either.
Yes, thank you for that reminder, Amanda. Like people have been doing this work well before us, well before it was like viewed as legitimate. Like well, but like right, like we have in every single way, and it's just sad to see like how it's devolved into a weird gatekeepy supremacist space in so many different functions.
I
Yeah.
think there's this point too that oh, and we had a chat. How do we make the choice of violence harder to make love? That connects back to Justin's definition of violence in the absence of choice on the town hall on Monday. Yes, very much aligned with our vision of how we talk about prevention in Michigan.
Mhm.
And I did want to say, I know that we got a chat earlier that talks about like the translation of these words into community and back. And I do want to say that while we have worked to like restructure our language, I do want to acknowledge that how people get funding most of the time is by using that language. So it's really harmful for us to be like, don't use it or don't learn it, or we're not going to teach you about what this means in context, because that also could mean that they don't get a grant to be able to do that. And so while I think that that structure does need to change, if it's not going to change tomorrow, some of the work that we also do is how do we help people get access to, if the cost is so high to be able to do that. And if we do have funding, do we replicate these systems that we're having to, just because the coalition has to navigate it, do we make other people have to navigate it? The answer is no, right? So sometimes it means you tell us what you're doing and we will write it maybe in another way and show you and ask you if you feel comfortable with us submitting this for you. I'm not going to make you learn a lexicon of, you know, all these different acronyms if you don't want to. If you want to, let's sit down and let's do this, absolutely. But you don't have to. You shouldn't have to. There's so much time that you need to be spending doing the work. Do the work, and we can do this other part.
And that was a big part of what the coalition did with me when I was still at a member program, was that translation of what we were doing. And because I wanted to know what does it look like to do that translation, I got to learn alongside and see what that jargon road pathway looks like.
Paige, I know that we have another mentee and I want to give people space. Do you want to introduce that?
I would love to. So I'm going to pull it up, and I have the QR code up again just in case you closed out of it. And not only the QR code, but I have the join the menti.com and the code. So let me go ahead and screen share. So our question now is, what are the words and phrases that we want to see? So we talked about all the jargon. What are the words and phrases we want to see? There we go. I don't know about anyone else, but does this just like start to make you smile looking at this? I mean, I know we were laughing before, but that was more of a laughing because what do all of these terms mean? This is like that connection and that joy. I still also think that even in the space of being accessible with our words and phrases, it's still going to be really important in this work to say what we mean by words, because words do carry meaning. Like even the word, we've talked a lot about it, and in different spaces, we've mentioned one of our community spaces that we have, the word community, and all of the things like what do people think of when they think of community? Like what does that actually encompass? So I think even here, there's further defining and discussion rather than assuming that everyone is on the same page. And at the same time, that enables us to have much more vulnerable conversations about the specific things that communities are looking for to build what prevention is going to look like for them. Because that's different community to community too, with overlapping similarities.
I love this word cloud so much. I really want to read some of these words to get them captured. I'm seeing love, community, cooperation, collaboration, safety, belonging, responsibility, compassion, humility. Oh, I'm trying to catch them before they run away. Joy, liberation, togetherness, relief. That's a good one. Freedom, peace, dream, grassroots. Oh, I'm sure I missed something. Ally, connection, friendship, appreciation, wholeness. So many great ones.
I liked that. Now I lost it. Where'd it go? Survivor driven was added here because we've talked about that, and it's so vitally important to stay centered in that. I think what Joseph said early on is like, this is the feedback we get from survivors, is they don't want this to happen again. So when we're talking to our leaders in our communities, at our agencies, like bringing forward what survivors are saying and telling us that they want, and involving them, and paying them when we can, is so critical.
Mhm. Now, looking at this Mentimeter makes me feel way better and way less stressed out and anxious. And it makes me feel that like somebody put in warmth. Like it does kind of like eases me a little bit. It makes me feel like this is what we're supposed to be doing versus that first Mentimeter that just looked super intimidating and completely inaccessible and not at all what we're supposed to be doing. But we spend so much time focusing on.
These are the words that actually prevent violence.
Yes.
This is where the work gets done. It is bumping into somebody at the local coffee shop and checking in with them, how they're doing, and then remembering that they work with childcare providers and letting them know some of the projects that I'm working on and reconnecting in that way. Real story. Happened yesterday. No, 2 days ago.
We're so glad that you all could share space with us today. Our information is in the chat if you want to connect further with us. And we're just so grateful that you took an hour out of your day to be here in this conversation with us.
This has been so great. You all have given us so much to think about. I'm sure folks would love that word cloud to be able to see that if it could be shared later. Just really great to think about the ways we can move differently, but also just naturally. I think in the ways that it naturally comes to us to speak with each other about how we want to see the world and see our future. Thank you so much. We have about 2 minutes left. Do y'all want to share anything, maybe less than 60 seconds each? Anything you want to leave us with?
I think if you have ever felt like you don't belong in this work, I want you to know that you do, and that we're here and we see you, and prevention work is about your experience. And I'm so sorry if someone along the way has made you feel like it isn't.
I love that.
Mhm.
Thank you all so much. Before folks head out of the session, please take the link to the survey to fill out the evaluation. We love that feedback. Round of applause. Thank you to our presenters for this conversation. Please connect with them, email them, check out their website to get some more information and more on these collaborations. And thank you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful day and hope to share space with you all again soon.